All right, joining us today is a superstar from the land down under, straight out of Humpty Doo and right onto another wrestling podcast. He is Outback Jack. Jack, how's it going today? How you doing?
Hey, bloody good to hear from you, mate. I'm doing quite well, actually, as a matter of fact.
How was it like growing up down under, and how big was pro wrestling there when you were growing up?
When I was a kid, there used to be World Championship Wrestling on at 12 noon on Saturday and Sunday. Mm-hmm. And I would sit with Nana, and we would watch the wrestling on Saturday and Sunday from 12 noon to 1 o'clock. And very, very big fans of it. Some of the fellows we watched at the time was good Red Bastine, good grief, who else? Lord Athol Hayes, or Alfred Hayes, rather. Tex McKenzie, and just the list goes on and on. Mario Milano, Spiros Arion, and I even saw, actually, Killer Carl Cox and Dory Funk Jr. Wrestle.
Wow, so definitely pro wrestling was definitely big back then over in Australia.
Oh, yes, absolutely, yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, fast forward a little bit, what can you tell us about getting into to be a pro wrestler? Because from what I understand, you were trained by Les Thornton, right?
Correct, Les Thornton, yeah. What had actually happened, I'd come back and was finding myself in a little spot of the world so I could rest a weary head. Mm-hmm. And I was up in Humpty Doo and working on a cattle station. And the deal is, on a Saturday, everybody jumps in the truck and goes to the local pub, the Humpty Doo pub. The town that has a population during the week of 40 grows to about 120 on a Saturday. Wow. And we had satellite television, and we'd watch stuff, and we used to actually watch the wrestling from Madison Square Garden via satellite at Saturday mornings at Bluey Drucker's pub. Mm-hmm. And anyway, it's just a little bit out of Darwin, and in walked these four fellas, Arnold Skolland and Hillbilly Jim, and let me think, I think Paul Roma was there, and Special Delivery Jones, if I remember right. And they came in and they said, we'd love to see what's going on. And I happened to be drinking at the bar with Norm the Bull. Uh-huh. And I said, Norm the Bull was a 2,000-pound Brahma bull, 18-month-old Brahma bull. And I said, look, here's what you do. Give us some tickets so we can all go in and watch your show in Darwin, and I'll take you out to the cattle station I work on and show you around. And that's how it happened. And then about 6 weeks after that, I got a big old envelope in the mail at the pub, and it was a letter from Vince McMahon and his director of International, which was it was Jim Troy, and actually a little incentive check and a contract. And about 2 weeks after that, I was on a plane, and I landed in Manhattan, met everybody, and the next thing you know, I'm up in the wilds of winter in Calgary, and I'm under the guidance of Les Thornton.
Wow, so basically you had no prior wrestling experience. I mean, they just stopped in one day, saw you, and wanted you to be a part of the WWE, huh?
Well, apparently, at the time it was the WWF. Yeah, yep, they had some, I guess, some issues on the tour, and they thought that I'd be a good character. Wow. And I wrestled amateur.
Oh, okay.
But for the Police Boys Club, that's about it.
Sure.
And that's like Police Athletic League stuff. And I did pretty well at the time. I had the 3 years in a row. I was the Olympic freestyle 100 kilo plus national champion. So, I mean, it's not like going to a university meet, where the thing takes 4 days to get through. You do this thing, and you've got the same 4 opponents every day.
Sure.
It's not competition. It's more training.
Yeah.
You know.
Now you mentioned too in Canada for Stu Hart Stampede Wrestling. What was it like up there? And you were just up there briefly, right, before coming into WWF then?
Yeah, I was up there for I think about 3 months, and Les got me going straight out, and obviously we travelled around all over Canada for Stampede Wrestling and Stu Hart, and it was fine. It was fine. It was an interesting part of the world to first get there and look up in the sky and see the sky completely upside down. Because, Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, same lights, but they're all upside down.
Well, now, what was it like working with Stu Hart, too, up there? Because from what I hear, too, I believe you refused to go into the Hart Dungeon. Is that a fact?
Oh, downstairs?
Yeah.
I just look, I'm not an idiot. I mean, please. I'm not gonna let somebody. Listen, kid. Let me show you this hole. Yeah. I'm not about to, have my arm snapped off and stuck up my backside because just to entertain a bloke. And I found some of the aspects of it, to be quite honest, to be cruel. It was more hazing than anything, and. I just didn't think it was fun to sit upstairs in the living room and let Stu Hart work on you down in the dungeon, and then listen to the grunts and the groans and the cries of pain coming up through the air ducts while everybody laughed. I mean, that just didn't amuse me at all.
Sure. Now,
right or wrong, I made the decision that no.
Definitely.
Simple.
Yep. Now, your character, I think, was pretty much based off the mainstream popularity of the Crocodile Dundee movie. Were you a fan of the movie, and did you like the idea of being able to bring that character to life in the WWF then?
Well, yes. Pardon me. The thing was, I guess it was parallel. I mean, I think Crocodile Dundee came out and I arrived about 4 days later.
Oh, wow.
And as it was, I mean, I was not as fanciful as Mick Dundee, but certainly I did everything that he did. I mean, I can't necessarily hypnotize a water buffalo, but you give him enough beer and a water buffalo will fall over half track,
Definitely. Now, throughout wrestling, a lot of people don't get to witness what happens behind the scenes, whether who's who's friends with who's feuding with who in the locker room. How was it like to be a part of that locker room back then? What was it like back there?
Well, it was a brand new experience for me, and from this standpoint, I'd played a lot of football, a lot of organized sports, and you sort of, in the sports that I've ever played, especially football, it's camaraderie all around. You go play your game of rugby or rugby league, and afterwards you get hammered and you have a fun time, and that's it. But you may not get on with everybody, but it's only rare that there would be a dust up or something like that. Mm-hmm. But in the wrestling game, everybody's mostly friendly, but you've always apparently got to guard yourself like too brutal, because everybody's an individual and they're selfishly out for themselves. So it breeds that sort of contempt, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, definitely.
But everybody's generally pretty good. But there was a bunch of snarkiness that went on, and people trying to one up and all that sort of stuff so they could better their positions. But that's the name of the game.
No, yeah, definitely. Also, you said in the past that Hillbilly Jim, the Junkyard Dog, and Hulk Hogan helped you out backstage and whatnot. And while Bobby Heenan treated you poorly, anything you can tell us about that?
Bobby Heenan was just sticking to his character, and as far as he realized, I'm just a bloody jabroni.
Yeah.
This new mutt that's been brought in and getting a big old push, and he had to make me look good in far as in some of the interviews and stuff like that. And Heenan was all right, but he I guess Heenan had his own way because he was Bobby Heenan the whole time. And it's not like he was Bobby Heenan. Then when he took off his shiny coat, he became Bob Smith. He was still Bobby Heenan.
Yep. Now, how was it like? How was the transition for you to where back in Australia you're watching wrestling on TV, and then a few months later, you get to actually be a part of this. You wrestled in Madison Square Garden. How was it being able to perform in front of all these fans? And was it just surreal and larger than life to actually be a part of it?
If you look back on it now, yes, it was surreal without a question. But then at the time, things are moving so fast that you don't get a chance to really scratch yourself and take it in too much. I mean, Madison Square Garden is obviously Mecca, and there's just something about Madison Square Garden, and to actually say and know that, hey, wait a minute, I've wrestled in Madison Square Garden for the WWF, WWE. I've been there a dozen times. I mean, that's something to be, I think, in your memories, to be cherished and looked upon as an achievement. But the transition from being an ordinary fellow that goofed off, got drunk every Saturday at the pub, yes, it's certainly worlds apart.
Definitely, and you were also part of history too, part of Wrestlemania 3, probably one of the biggest shows out of the year for WWE or WWF. How was it like to be a part of a WrestleMania?
It was that's when we got the chance to sit back and go, good bloody Lord, holy cow!
Yeah,
93,000 plus people, bums in seats. I mean, that's it's staggering. And then I went back there about 3 weeks after that. I wrestled with Hammer Valentine, and we had a huge crowd. We had 45,000 people, and the place was empty. It just seemed empty, know. And but yet when you're there and there's 93,000 people, it's like the classic saying of a sea of humanity.
Yeah,
and that one you had to really check your nerves.
Definitely. Now, a lot of things we never get to see happen, or things are talked about that they might happen. And we also heard that Hillbilly Jim and you were actually supposed to win the tag team championships at one point, but the idea fell through. I know you probably may not know the idea or what happened with that, but is there anything you could probably tell us about that going on, and maybe what could have been?
I can tell you the absolute honest truth here. Hillbilly and I we were to get the straps from the Hart Foundation, I believe, at the time, and there was going to be a big push. And unfortunately, I mean, Hillbilly and I worked well together, but there was a rather ugly sequence of what's the best word to use, manhandling by some chaps, and I fell unwell. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
And I think they sort of thought, well, we can't really do this. And there were some times there that I didn't necessarily have the people backing me in the back office.
All right. Now, you have been also outspoken about your use of steroids. In today's landscape, the WWE has a wellness policy in which superstars are tested every so often. What are your thoughts about that? And do you think something like that maybe should have been in place back in the 80s?
I wasn't outspoken about it. I happily tell you, I did steroids. Of course I did. You couldn't survive with the number of shots we did every year without. And shot by shot, I mean shows, not steroid shots. You couldn't survive without having some additive to repair injuries. I mean, it's like the NFL. I mean, I consider the wrestling that I did, the 4 years or so that I ran around there, I would consider that to easily the equivalent of 2 years in the NFL. The banging, the sprains, the twists, and you can't stop.
Yeah.
I mean, if you stop, you don't get a paycheck, and you soon realize that, wait a minute, I can't take 3 days off. That's X number of dollars out of the whippy. So the reason you took the steroids obviously was to get stronger, but mainly because if you did get injured, you'd be repaired a bunch quicker. I can tell you quite clearly, I dislocated a shoulder in a match. I think I was working with Neidhart, and he threw me over the top rope, and I missed the top rope to, guide my fall down, and I landed on the concrete floor, and I drove my elbow into the floor, and actually all that did is pop my shoulder out of the top. Mm-hmm. I pulled it back into place and finished up the match. But the thing was, I that's a 6 to 8 week debilitating injury. But because I was taking steroids, and I obviously had to take care of myself. I had to take a week off from doing anything. I still worked, but I couldn't go to the gym. About 10 days later, I could do 45-pound flies again to get my shoulder back into shape.
Yeah, definitely. In today's wrestling too, a lot of the guys, they're on the road for 300 plus days a year, and some people are talking about, is it too much to where it's almost like, should wrestling have seasons where they get off a certain amount of weeks, they do it for a certain amount of time instead of doing it 300 plus days a year? Do you think that would be realistic maybe in the wrestling business, or you really have to be on the road 5 days a week, you got to travel just to get your face in front of different audiences, right? Is it too much, you think, with the traveling from back then even to today? Is it too much on a person?
Well, back then we did 300 shows a year easily. You'd be on for 90 days, and somewhere along the way you'd then get 3 or 4 days off. Yeah. Sometimes they'd try and work it so you were close to your house, or in my case, my house at the time was in Fairfield, Connecticut. And then I lived up in Boston for a little while. But what I would do, depending where I was, I would stay in the location I was, and I would sightsee. So I wanted to. You didn't get much of a chance to go out and have a look around when you were working, but 3 to 4 days off, I could go around and have a look at Albuquerque and look at varying places. Have a wander around Los Angeles, San Francisco. So that was beneficial to me, and that's what I did. But we did 300 days a year, but and it was tough. It was very tough, and it takes a toll on your body. It takes you a toll on you emotionally. I think Roddy Piper said that. There's nothing quite like the loneliness of being on the road. Yeah. And the show actually makes you come alive. But then afterwards, when you're done, you go back to the hotel room and you're sitting there and you're looking at, good God, what are these bloody walls doing? Yeah. And that's, I don't think it's too much as long as you can handle it. And we were talking before about Vince McMahon's and the WWE's wellness program. I'm not sure whether that's true or not. It seems as though I did read a little bit ago that there were 2 or 3 or 4 wrestlers, male and female, that were suspended for breaching their wellness program, and I'm just unsure what that was.
Yeah, so there were a few wrestlers were, and they didn't specifically say what it was that they were suspended for, but I believe one wrestler was suspended for, I believe it was just a testosterone supplement kind of thing to just balance out what he was taking. So it's a variety of things, from anything from marijuana to certain medications are banned. So it's a whole list of, I don't have the list in front of me, but it's definitely a whole list of things these days. And like you said, these guys are on the road. You're on the road for 300 plus days, shows a year. It's where the body breaks down and needs to heal. And it's, you can't really just sleep on it, right? It's the body, right. Especially when you're traveling so much and like that, you definitely need something to help you to recover. So
I do think, the thing about marijuana, yes, illicit drugs that some people take, obviously are bad. But the getting squirrely about somebody smoking a little bit of pot, that to me is hypocritical. Yeah. I just think it is.
Mm-hmm. Now, just to go back to a little lighter side, for some history fans out there, we have that you were probably the first person ever that Ted DiBiase put the $100 bill in their mouth, and also I believe Ted DiBiase wanted it back after the match, but you refused.
I'm not giving that back to you. Are you kidding me? Stick $100 in my mouth. I'm hanging on to that. Yeah, I bit down on it. I never gave it back to him back again.
How was it working with Ted DiBiase too? Was he a good guy?
Phenomenal. He was fantastic. He's the absolute consummate ring general. And you know, when a face works with the heel controls the match. Mm-hmm. I think everybody knows that. It's not like I'm telling stories out of school. And he tells the story. You follow along, makes you look good. And he, as I said, he was a masterful ring general for that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And a decent bloke with it. You know, mm-hmm. there was some fellows were obviously. I don't know, were caught up in whatever, but you know, there was nothing to be gained by Ted. He wanted to do the job, be friends, go off and go back to his hotel room, have some deal or do whatever, and then go to the next spot.
Definitely. Now, from him to the weirdest guy, I believe you said you ever wrestled was the Ultimate Warrior. Why is that?
I worked with the Ultimate Warrior in a Royal Rumble. I mean, he's just unpredictability.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You never knew where Jim was coming from.
Yeah.
And that was just, and as soon as you got a hold on what you thought he was going to do, and I mean, mentally what you think he was going to do next, or so you could set up for whatever, it would change, or it wouldn't be what you thought, you know.
Mm-hmm. Now, also, too, when you left the WWF at that time, I believe you got a TV show called This Is Adventure with Outback Jack.
This is Adventure, yep, absolutely.
What can you tell us about that? And was it a little bit different for you, the first time doing like a television show, as far as outside of wrestling?
Well, it was initially, because it obviously delved into the stuff I'd done in the past, working on a cattle station, and it was a good grief, what was it, 20 years, 18 years before the Crocodile Hunter.
Yeah. And
certainly the same sort of show, very similar, but our stuff was shot all over the world, where we, obviously initially we primarily looked at Australian wildlife, but then we started to do a couple of shows, and one of them was a big one, was about the founding of Australia and the transportation of convicts from Britain and from the US to the shores of Australia. And actually, we did a whole show on Port Arthur down in Tasmania, which was where the prisoners that were the absolute worst in the world, if they were alive now, they'd be in solitary in that Supermax prison out there in Colorado, because these people were truly evil. You know, one of them, Frank Pierce, was he was a murderer, a rapist, and that's a standard for the course. I mean, there are a lot of murderers and rapists, but the one thing that Frank did was he ate his fellow prisoners. He lured over the years. He lured away 8 different prisoners to escape into the bush from Port Arthur, and lo and behold, he ate them all. So there was the I don't think both oars touched the water at the same time with young Mr. Pierce. Yeah. They eventually got fed up with him, to coin a phrase, and they hung him. But so we were doing history shows like that. We did a show in New Guinea about down bombers from the Second World War, and it was a very different show, but we still managed to show wildlife and stuff like that.
Nice.
And very definitely a different show to the Crocodile Hunter, and may rest in peace, although I was not a fan of his.
All right. Now, if you could give one piece of advice for anybody looking to pursue a career in wrestling, or some guys who are just maybe starting out in wrestling right now, is there anything you could probably tell them who, they probably have some naive minds to where they don't really know too much about getting into a full career, but anything you could give them as far as advice, what they should look out for, maybe?
I would think the best thing to do is don't take yourself too seriously. You know, don't believe your own publicity, and don't become a legend in your own lunchtime. And at the same time, choose who you really want to believe as a mentor, because not everybody's going to be your mate. Mm-hmm. And you'll be able to work that out. So if you go into the business with a little bit of street smarts, you know, like I said, not everybody's going to be your mate, and just don't take yourself too seriously. So stuff doesn't go wacky on you, and you take it the wrong way. At the same time, you've also got to have a set of balls.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean that's without a doubt. I mean. And somewhere along the way, you will be tested.
Definitely. Well, Outback Jack, you know, it was great having you on here today. We really appreciate your time. And for the fans listening around the world, we thank you so much.
Mate, Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure. And that was wonderful. Everything flowed nicely, and you're a great interviewer. Thank you very much.